Good morning, welcome to a Calvinian architecture. This is the second last day of this journey that we've undertaken together. It's gone unbelievably quickly, and today I'm reading from the 7th octave, the 8th chapter, the Khan's Atlas. I'm reading verse 2. Both verse 2 and verse 3 are quite long, so I'll be dividing the storytelling between today and tomorrow. Verse 2. If you walk 168 steps towards the south from my house, then 189 steps back towards the north, you will have covered the whole length of the laneway. Then if you walk back south again for another 28, you'll be at my house again. You might be wondering about the discrepancy between the number of steps it takes to walk it one way and then the other. Well, there's a laneway on the path to the south that would have added 7 extra steps to the journey, but being a void, a portal, if you like, I didn't add it on. So that's 189 steps both ways. The journey might take you 5 minutes or 3 if you need to be somewhere else very soon, or an hour or 2 if you linger and talk to Joe or his son Emilio, or Angelo or Patrick, his nephew, or Angelo from Sicily, though he was born here, or Kate, or Ilya and his wife Dushka, or Mavis and Fred, or Frank and Catherine, or Helen and Frank, or Henry and his mum and dad. No one else might quite understand the mysterious romance of this lane that we live in, but we know, all of us who share it, who each day journey it up and down, either on our way out into the world or on our way back to our homes, returning from the world. Perhaps only Franz Kafka's little story titled The Next Village might describe this paradox succinctly enough. This is it. My grandfather used to say, life is astonishingly short. As I look back on it now, it becomes so telescoped in my mind that, for example, I have difficulty in understanding how a young man can come to a decision to ride to the next village without being afraid that leaving possible misfortunes quite out of account. Even the span of a normal fortune-favoured existence would be quite inadequate for the trip. Well, my normal fortune-favoured existence, though I'm no young man, has proved wholly inadequate for the journey through the laneway, let alone the next village. There's something I cannot understand about all this. How, for instance, when I'm in New York or Bangkok or anywhere for that matter, suddenly a little corner of Angela's garage will suddenly appear before my eyes, real as you like. Or the way the rambling rose spills out over Henry's parents' fence. Any of it will suddenly jump to the forefront of whatever I might be saying to someone or thinking to myself. Or, for instance, how a certain sheet of rusted galvanized iron, I can point out exactly which one, will bang monotonously in the wind in late autumn. Or how Ilya's diesel ute chugs up the lane and slows down before the little speed hump, only to accelerate again as it climbs the hill to his house. Perhaps a heavy chest of drawers is secured in the tray, making the motor work a little harder. Luigi across from me switches the ignition on his Commodore station wagon at 5 a.m. most mornings. Then comes the familiar rolling sound of his garage door and he's away to Preston Market, helping his Sicilian friends out with their vegetable store. Once a year he'll call me in from the murky rear of his double garage, knowing somehow that I'm within earshot. I still haven't figured out that he knows this. But he calls me in, and he's been picking wild artichokes at dawn from the fields in Epping or Broadmeadows or Layla. They're minuscule, these little green globes, as he sits straddling a bucket, discarding the dry outer leaves to reveal a soft inner heart. He drops hundreds of these into a bucket of cold water, and after they're left to soak for a few days, he preserves them in oil. He calls me in to give me a jar. When I'm away, he prunes my trees, uninvited and unannounced, but they've grown well under his care. The stories of the lane are endless. There are as many as there are days. Sometimes very late at night, I'll just walk out there and stand in the middle of it listening. I don't know what I expect to hear, but the pleasure is like the one I experienced when my children were little and I would watch them sleeping. It's something like that, watching the lane sleeping, thinking of all my neighbours safe in their beds, here for one more day, given, as Kafka's grandfather observed, that life is astonishingly short. Shall I tell you more? About how the partridges loved to congregate after rain around the puddles near the school, or how Kate's singing students' voices drift over to me some nights when I'm standing on the balcony looking out for the silent flying lights that never come, or just sitting here at my table holding the ocarina pipe or the rubber from Corso Garibaldi, and I'll hear the faint chords of her piano and one or more voices following the notes. Well, that's enough. It's enough to tell you that this is a journey I most like to make, just up to the top of the lane, and then watching the late evening sky perhaps, or, if I'm lucky, hearing that crystalline bell pealing from the Greek monastery down by St. George's Road. Once, as leaves fell all around us in the garden, we stood under the full lemon tree, Chris and I, struggling to hold our weeping life together. Just then, just at that very point, the bell pealed, and for good or bad, that single sequence crossing the air from the bell tower to the lemon tree gave us 10 more years in which to try and gather all those fallen leaves, all the leaves that fell around us and dropped at our feet that late afternoon. They later kept spilling through our arms, and we tried desperately to keep them all in, each single tiny leaf, from falling to the cold ground again. And as I walk down while the bell peals to what I know I must now call my home, though it's clear, isn't it, that my life, my whole entire fortune-favoured existence has proved quite inadequate for even this little trip. Yes, those leaves falling. And they still are. Until tomorrow, when I will read you verse 3, the final offering in a Calvinian architecture. Until tomorrow.